Let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it. He did it.
Left with White. Peterson. He's gone. Touchdown. Tavon Austin.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
They want to have a 7-on-7 drill. We want to make it a fist fight. Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football.
From the heart. Streaming. It's Mountaineer pride. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
West Virginia is a special place. People in this state that have great pride in this WV logo.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads webcast, October 16th edition, bringing back the Snap Counts live stream, of course, first game back following a bye week for the Mountaineers. No, it didn't turn out the way we wanted to. We'll put a bow on it here as far as us discussing it with our Snap Counts discussion, and of course, we're going to provide an injury update as well, and then as we always do on these weekly streams, use the information we got, of course, from the snap counts of the last game, the injury updates we know moving forward, and try and project out a depth chart. So that's what we like to do here on these early week live streams, bringing to you weekly here on the Country Roads webcast, as long as West Virginia has a game coming up, of course. But appreciate you guys being in here live, or if you're watching on playback, either one, I ask that you hit the thumbs up button. Really helps not only this video's performance, but future videos' performances as well. If you like this video, and if you're a West Virginia fan, Big 12 fan, college football fan, be sure to subscribe. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. And if you are in here live, encourage you, drop any questions, comments, concerns you got there in the chat. Address all of those, as much as we can anyway, as we go throughout the stream here, and in between touching on the snap counts and the injury updates, and then projecting the depth chart. But won't keep you guys too late with it coming a little bit later tonight. I had to work today. That's why this one's later in the day. But, typically just varies what time these snap count streams come at you. That's why I always try and schedule them ahead of time so you can see it in your YouTube feed if you're subscribed to us. And then I also, of course, post it on our social media, which be sure you follow us there as well, at WVU Country Roads on X, and then Country Roads Webcast on Facebook and Instagram. But appreciate you whether you're in here live or tuning in on a playback. I'm going to dive in first with the injury updates, but let's see here. See if I can share this. I think this one is from, this is from Golden Blue Nation. Of course, injury report coming out of Neil Brown's press conference. Can always get a little bit of a insight from those. That's why I typically like to do these streams either on Monday or Tuesdays for, these snap count streams. So after getting that injury update from Coach Brown, because we know it's definitely an ongoing situation West Virginia is going to be watching moving forward after, you had 4 starters out for this previous game. And then, others are up in the air moving forward. So got updates on all of those pretty much. Left tackle Wyatt Milam is expected to return. That's the good news for the West Virginia offensive line. So it was a bit of bad news, good news there, though, as Thomas Remick will not be returning, unlikely to play against Oklahoma State. Of course, missed last week's game since that lower leg injury he suffered versus TCU. Jaquay Hubbard's been filling in, and he's actually been playing the right guard position. Brandon Yates has shifted over to the left guard. since the injury to Tomas, but looks like UCF is the earliest that they're expecting Tomas back. So as far as the injuries on the offensive side, Wyatt Milam looks like he'll be back and available for this Oklahoma State game. Tomas will not. Then moving on, we also got the update, of course, on Aubrey Burks. We know how scary that situation was. I think we were all kind of expecting him not to play against Houston and just kind of see how things progress moving forward. Sounds like he's returned to practice, though, in a limited capacity as far as today is concerned anyway. First time practicing since, coming out of the hospital. So going to have to definitely see how he handles that. But Neil Brown, stated he's hopeful he'll progress and be available. So sounds like there's a chance Aubrey Burks could play in this game, but we'll see what happens throughout the week. Maybe we'll learn more about that and his status on Neil Brown's radio show on Thursday evening. So maybe during our Q&A, prediction stream, we'll be able to talk about that one a little bit further and maybe know more about that. Of course, Neil Brown was asked about Tyreek Austin Cave, who we reported on here over, the past couple of weeks during our snap count streams here when we do our injury update portion. And sounds like he practiced, or at least has returned to practice, which was big because Coach Brown said it's going to take a little bit because he hasn't practiced, a couple of times since fall camp. Yeah, maybe 2 days since fall camp was the quote stated there. But you would love to see him get healthy, and because he could really help West Virginia right now. We know the two areas where West Virginia has been depleted a bit, of course, is linebacker and the secondary. Prior to the season, you lose Josiah Trotter, who was really going to help you a ton at that linebacker position, be it at the Mike or the Will spot. Then, of course, we all know losing Trey Lathan, who was performing so well already on the season. So West Virginia, searching for depth at the linebacker position. Tyreek Austin Cave could certainly help out there, the Miami transfer, and we've all been wanting to, see what he can do really since he arrived, and he's kind of just been in the background. I know he's been battling injury off and on, but I think if he does ever get a shot to get out there consistently, he's going to be a guy that's going to be a contributor, especially as things stand right now for the Mountaineers at those linebacker spots. So hopefully we'll see what happens. And then Justin Johnson, I know a lot of people were wondering where he was, didn't get any carries in the game against Houston. We saw, Jaheim White, Jalen Anderson, CJ Donaldson, but Neil Brown said he was out due to an illness that forced him to miss all weekend. He didn't make the trip with the team, but also Neil Brown, I see there, didn't indicate anything as far as Justin Johnson's availability moving forward either. So we'll keep an eye on that, but hopefully he's available to return. If it was just, an illness, hopefully it's only something that kept him out just for that brief period, and he's back with the team and ready to go this weekend. We'll see what happens, and, we'll see where he would be at in that pecking order anyways. I think, West Virginia's been spreading it out between, Jaheim White, Jalen Anderson, and CJ Donaldson right now. And, some may argue they could narrow that down to even two guys or something. We'll see if they choose to do that this Saturday. Maybe, just go with whoever has the hot hand. I don't know. There's also been a suggestion of, Jaheim White's looked even better than CJ Donaldson at times. Maybe you flip those roles, give Jaheim White more of the bulk of the carries and use CJ Donaldson more sparingly, and then maybe he'll be more effective too. I don't know. There's definitely some interesting things they can do with that running back position, especially if you throw Justin Johnson back in the mix. So we'll keep an eye on that as well moving forward. And of course, coming up as West Virginia returns home for this big game against Oklahoma State. And we'll talk about that one plenty this week here on the Country Roads webcast, of course, with prediction and Q&A stream coming later this week. Appreciate you, Tim. See you in here, man. He says, let's go Mountaineers. Get ready to beat Oklahoma State. That's what we're hoping, Tim. That's what we're hoping to see. I think that this team has shown the mentality that they're going to be a team that, consistently fights. They've done that, in games throughout this season. So I think as devastating as a loss and heartbreaking of a loss as that was, I think this team has the mindset and mentality to be able to bounce back from that, because it's type of thing where you've heard people talk about it can make you or break you. Losing in the way that West Virginia did in that such, heartbreaking manner. But I think West Virginia is going to be a team where it really makes them, they're going to be very resilient like they've been in games throughout this season. And we're going to see a very good West Virginia football team come out on this field Saturday against Oklahoma State. That's what I'm expecting, Tim, and hoping for. Thank you, Tim. We really appreciate you, man. Love you to death, man. Appreciate you. But moving on, there's the injury update. So now let's get into the snap counts, because then we can finally maybe quit talking about this Houston game, put it behind us. Don't want to talk about it any more than you guys want to hear about it. But of course, got to continue to do the weekly features here. So cover the snap counts real quick. And then, of course, using the injury updates I just discussed and the snap counts, from the previous game we're about to go over here, I'll share with you guys my projected depth chart for the upcoming week. West Virginia hasn't really been releasing depth charts throughout this season. So that's why I decided to, not only make the snap counts feature live stream actually, but include a couple other things with it, those being injury updates and then a projected depth chart. It's something that I like to do anyways, is keep up with depth charts, and West Virginia hasn't really been releasing one, so I've just been kind of trying to project one out for the upcoming week for the Mountaineers, like I said, based on snap counts, injury updates, and then of course a little bit of guesswork as well. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're a little bit off, but usually more often than not they're pretty close to what you end up seeing on Saturdays, I think, in my opinion. But anyway, continuing on with the snap counts portion before we get there to that projected depth chart. But appreciate you guys tuning in live or on a playback. If you like this kind of content, be sure and subscribe to us here at the Country Roads Webcast, always doing things that cover, roster management, recruiting, like I said, depth chart, all of that here on the football side. So be sure to check us out. If this is your first time, hit the playlist where you can find all of that stuff, and plenty of live streams like this one. This is once a week, and then we've got another one coming later in the week where we do predictions, get your predictions for the upcoming West Virginia game, and of course take your questions like we are here during this live stream as well. If you are in here live, drop any questions, comments, concerns you got there in the chat. I'll touch on them as we continue throughout here. But continuing on with the snap counts here, of course, Garrett Green playing all the snaps at the quarterback position for the West Virginia Mountaineers, who ran 85 plays in this game, outpacing the Houston offensive lot in time of possession and, of course, in amount of plays run as well. Running backs, I mentioned West Virginia, splitting it across the three right now. 49 snaps for C.J. Donaldson in this game, 18 for Jaheim White, and 18 for Jalen Anderson. The fullback position, we've seen a lot of Luke Hamilton this season, so this is probably the thing that most caught my eye looking at these snap counts, was seeing Colin McBee get a snap at fullback and not seeing Luke Hamilton. I was interested to see if anyone asked about Luke Hamilton during the press conference. No one did. Hopefully there's no injury or anything going on there with him. I haven't heard any reports of anything like that, but who knows? Maybe Colin McBee was just in, situationally for a play. But nonetheless, we get Colin McBee getting a snap at the fullback position for the Mountaineers. First time in, a few games we've seen Colin McBee, if I'm not mistaken. But glad to see him get some action. But hopefully Luke Hamilton's okay moving forward as well, and get to see him play that fullback position some for the Mountaineers, because I think he's done a great job when he's been in there in, short yardage situations, goal to go. The few times that we have seen Luke Hamilton as well, I think they've been effective, and he's been effective lead blocking. So hopefully we'll see more of that utilized in the future. Wide receivers, Hudson Clement, 72 snaps to, lead the wide receiver room there. And he played great. Of course, we all know the standout play there at the end of the game. Talked about, many times since the game, what a storybook ending that could have been and should have been. And then Traylon Ray, I thought, played his best game as a Mountaineer yet, in his 67 snaps as well. Of course, had the touchdown on the flea flicker, but made some other nice plays in there as well. And then Devin Carter, his best game since coming to us, probably also here at WVU. 56 snaps for him. And I think his snap count was a little bit lower there because West Virginia, and they talked about this today in the press conferences, utilized him at the inside more so. He's been an outside receiver for West Virginia all year, and I think now they may move him around a little bit, and you'll see in the depth chart. I haven't moved him yet. I want to see what West Virginia does this Saturday. If he plays more inside receiver, then you may see, during this snap count stream next week, in the depth chart portion, him move to that inside receiver position if he continues to play there. But in this game, he played there a lot, so that's why his snap count's kind of down. That's also why Preston Fox's snaps are lower, because Devin Carter was in there playing that slot position a lot for the Mountaineers, and it worked out well. You see him have his best game, over 100 receiving yards. They targeted him 11 times, and hopefully, he continues to have good production like that, because West Virginia's passing offense, if it continues to come along like that, they're going to be very hard to defend. And then, as I mentioned, the slot receivers for West Virginia, Rodney Gallagher, 18 snaps, outpacing Preston Fox with the aforementioned 17 snaps. 16 that's from last week. I never took Traylon Ray off there from last week, apparently. But then you get 12 from E.J. Horton. But E.J. Horton did have the 45-yard reception during his 12 snaps. So, these are kind of the 6 receivers that West Virginia has been featuring over the past couple of weeks, and seems like those are going to be the guys moving forward, for the remainder of the season. as West Virginia talked about shortening that receiver rotation. And since then, those are kind of the faces that we've seen. So seems like those will be the players moving forward. And I would not be surprised to see more of E.J. Horton. And, I've talked about Gallagher. I love West Virginia using him and him, getting more snaps. But I'd like to see us target him more in, the traditional passing game downfield rather than just jet sweeps and screens and reverses, which it seems like we're just been using him a lot on those gadget plays. But we'll see what happens moving forward. Tight ends, it's, of course, Cole Taylor and Traylon Davis. Those have been the guys, and they will continue to be. 73 snaps for a now, seemingly healthy Cole Taylor, and he played a phenomenal game as well. Targeted a lot, had over 60 yards receiving of his own, and 24 snaps for Traylon Davis, who's been good for the West Virginia Mountaineers. And, kind of as expected along the offensive line, West Virginia had only been playing, about 7 at times, and these 2 subs that they've been playing really were Nick Malone and Jaquay Hubbard. So when both of those guys are forced into your starting lineup because of the injuries that we talked about to, Wyatt Milam and Thomas Remick, you kind of figure that you're just going to play your starting 5 for the whole game if you can, and that's what West Virginia did do, all of them playing 85 snaps, and I just got them listed there, in order from left tackle to right tackle. Left tackle Nick Malone, left guard Brandon Yates, center Zach Frazier, right guard Jaquay Hubbard, and right tackle Doug Nestor. And seems like you'll see that same lineup this Saturday, but with Nick Malone slotting back in. I mean, not Nick Malone, excuse me, Wyatt Milam slotting back in at left tackle for Nick Malone. And Nick Malone may, still get into some action. He has throughout this season, coming in as a eligible, receiver as like a tight end type position, but really just in there as an extra blocker, sometimes on those goal line and short yardage situations I was talking about for Luke Hamilton. And then, played sparingly on the season, but did a great job. And I think filling in this game, he played admirably as well. He had a good grade on PFF, one of the higher graded West Virginia players on the offensive side. So West Virginia's pass protection was also very good. So he did a good job protecting Garrett Green's blind side also. But I'm going to take a swig of my water here, and then I will flip over to the defensive side and talk about those snap counts here momentarily. All right. Flipping it over to the snap counts on the defensive side versus Houston, and then we'll put this game in the rear view and look ahead for, I'll provide a depth chart projection, and then moving forward, the content here on the Country Roads webcast will be focused on, Oklahoma State, as West Virginia has a pivotal game coming up against the Cowboys. Identical records and, overall, both teams 4-2, both teams, identical records in the conference 2-1. So to me, my theme, for this game coming up for West Virginia is I think it's really going to be a game that's going to tell which one of these two teams, the Mountaineers or the Cowboys, is a contender and which one's a pretender. Because someone's going to stay in, the Big 12 race with the win on Saturday, and hopefully it's our Mountaineers. And having it in Morgantown is a great thing for us, and having it, as a homecoming game should be a great turnout for the game, which should help as well. And I think, as I said earlier, West Virginia is prepared to bounce back, but we'll look ahead to that momentarily. Before we do, let's finish up with our snap counts in the game against Houston on the defensive side here. The defensive line, of course, we've talked a lot about West Virginia being deep at that position. You see that yet again this week with all the snaps that are played there. Eddie V pacing that. Steady Eddie, as I like to call him here, 41 snaps for him, 36 for Sean Martin, and 33 for Mike Lockhart. Your starters there along the defensive line. Tomi Durajaye, I thought probably had the best game of any West Virginia defensive lineman, him or Fatorma Mulba, who have both stood out despite, playing reserve roles this season. But 19 snaps for Tomi, 10 for Jalen Thornton, 9 for Fatorma, who I just mentioned there, as well as 9 for Day Hawkins, who I think have both played good for the Mountaineers this season. Asani Redwood continuing to work his way into the rotation, coming back from injury, 8 snaps, and then you get 1 snap for Hammond Russell in the game as well. The Bandits, of course, Jared Bartlett and Tyron Bradley, the faces that we've seen for the Mountaineers there at that position pretty much exclusively this season. 44 snaps for Bartlett, 27 for Tyron Bradley, and I thought Jared Bartlett's play really stood out. I heard on In the Gun that he was getting some advice on the sidelines from Bruce Irvin, who was at the game. There was a ton of former Mountaineers at the game. Dana Holgerson even talked about it in his post-game press conference, seeing a lot of his former players on the sideline, and talked about them asking he was going to get them to buy him a drink or something like that. But of course, I think it was Bruce Irvin was there, Stedman, Carl Joseph, a lot of them. But Bruce Irvin and Jared Bartlett were talking apparently. And we saw Jared Bartlett, provide some good pressure a couple of times, got a sack in this game. So hopefully Bruce Irvin gave him some good advice that not only helped him, maybe get that sack against Houston, but helps him, moving forward in the pass rush, because we need West Virginia's pass rush to be better overall than it was against Houston. That was one of the, I don't want to say worst, but yeah, I'll say worst pass rush games that we've seen on the season for the Mountaineers, because their pass rush had been, a weapon prior to that game. And of course, I think missing Trey Lathan played a part in that. But the Bandits for the Mountaineers overall this season have not been bad. I think that they've improved from what we've seen in years past. And I think Jared Bartlett looks like an improved player. And in this game, he stood out, I thought. The other linebackers, of course, for West Virginia were mainly Lee Koba and Ben Cutter. And those are kind of going to be the primary two you see moving forward. You could also maybe see Caden Bizer get in the mix here. I mentioned Austin Cave earlier. If he gets healthy, I think he'll certainly play some snaps there and try and spell Ben Cutter at the Mike position. You got Joff Riveros getting 9 snaps in the game. And I think that was a good move because he's probably a little bit better in pass coverage than both Cutter and Koba, because he's a former defensive back, as my dog barks in the background there. I believe my wife's pulling up outside. I don't know if my mic's picking that up or not, but apologies if it is. But Joff Riveros, of course, originally coming to West Virginia as a defensive back, probably a little bit better in pass coverage, so maybe matched up a little bit better with Houston. So maybe that's why you saw him get in on the 9 snaps that he did get to play. And then, of course, 50 for Lee Koba, 48 for Ben Cutter, who I thought making his first career start played pretty well there at the Mike linebacker position, and is only going to get better the more he plays throughout this season. So I think we'll continue to see just better and better versions of Ben Cutter each progressive game over these final 6 games for the Mountaineers moving forward on this 2023 season. I'm excited about the future of the linebacker position at West Virginia, if I'm being honest. I talked about the injuries West Virginia suffered there earlier, Josiah Trotter and Trey Lathan, but then also West Virginia is going to have all those guys back next season, save for, of course, Lee Koba, who's one of the lone seniors on the team. But you're going to have a nice fight for these positions at this linebacker spot for West Virginia. And, maybe someone is going to have to move to, a bandit position or something like that just to get on the field, because West Virginia has the Mike linebacker position and they have the Will linebacker position. But you're going to have Ben Cutter, you're going to have Trey Lathan, you're going to have Josiah Trotter, you're going to have Joff Riveros, and, whoever else you may bring in along the way. So I think the linebacker position has a bright future at West Virginia, despite the fact that you're looking pretty bare right there, I guess you could say. The cupboard's a little bit bare right now because of the injuries that you've suffered. So you're really just going to have Lee Koba and Ben Cutter playing a ton of snaps moving forward. So you just got to hope that they don't wear down late in games and wear down late in the season. And hopefully, like I said, you can get Austin Cave maybe healthy, and hopefully Joff Riveros can continue to steal some snaps there as well. But the Spear, of course, it's been Hershey McLaurin and Lance Dixon as the primary two, kind of similar to Bartlett and Bradley there at the bandit positions. Hershey McLaurin outpacing Lance Dixon in snaps in this one, 38-31. But Lance Dixon did, have a high grade there on PFF, one of his higher grades since, coming to the Mountaineers. So I was happy to see him with that high grade on the defensive side. And then when you look in the secondary, this goes, hand in hand with the things I just said about the linebacker position in terms of injuries and depth moving forward on the season. And then you also have a lot of, bright young potential that could play down the line. And I wouldn't rule out some of the young guys on the roster maybe getting into the action and getting some snaps when West Virginia needs some help, in reserve spots later in the season, whether it be at the safety positions or at the cornerback positions, because you got to remember, after 2 more games, you're down to the Final 4. And, some of these freshmen that haven't played yet, they could even play in, all of those games. And if they've only played, maybe they played a few snaps against Duquesne, they could play in 3 out of the 4 if West Virginia gets down to really needing somebody at the cornerback position or the safety position, because that's something you start to worry about now as well. I mentioned the loss as a linebacker, out for the season. Also at the secondary here at the cornerback position, you lost Montre Miller, who I thought could really, help you coming from Kent State. And you lost Keyshawn Cobb, who was a great transfer coming in from Buffalo at the safety position. And of course, Aubrey Burks' status still up in the air moving forward as to when he will return, although we know that he will return this season. So West Virginia really right now is down to Anthony Wilson and Marcus Floyd at the safety position, and Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin at the cornerback position. Although you've seen Jacoby Spells get some snaps sparingly, you haven't really seen Wilson Lamp play too much there. So that's why you see 59 snaps across the board, going the whole distance for Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin at the cornerback spot. And then the two safeties, 59 snaps for Anthony Wilson playing the cat safety position, and 59 snaps for Marcus Floyd playing the free safety position. So that's kind of why you see those guys going, end to end, and a couple of games this season, both of those positions really. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Aubrey Burks coming back should help the safeties. Maybe Jacoby Spells can continue developing, get some snaps there, but West Virginia going to need depth at the linebacker and safety position. That's kind of one of my concerns just moving forward, just because of injuries and how things have shaken out. But those are the snap counts from the game against Houston. Like I said, we'll put that one in the rear view now, and using the injury update there and those snap counts and, like I said, a little bit of guesswork, share with you guys my projected depth chart for this week. And as West Virginia gets ready to prepare for a homecoming game, return back to Mountaineer Field for the first time in almost a month. Excited to see that and see them take on this Oklahoma State Cowboys team that's really turned their season around. And like I said, both of these teams are in position to potentially still compete in this Big 12 conference race, but this Saturday is probably going to eliminate one of them from contention. So it's a very big game coming up for the Mountaineers, and we'll take a look at what I think the depth chart could look like for the Mountaineers with this week upcoming. But let me take one more swig of my water before I do that. All right, much better, much better. Appreciate you guys that are in here live with me. Like I said, encourage you one more time, drop any questions, comments, concerns you got there in the chat after I share my depth chart projection here. I'll touch on those one more time here before get ready to close out. Like I said, don't want to keep you guys too late with me doing this one a little bit later this week, but we'll have our preview show coming out here in a couple of days, our Oklahoma State preview and predictions podcast. And then, of course, later in the week, probably Thursday or Friday night, we'll be doing our prediction stream with you guys where you can share your predictions for the game against Oklahoma State this upcoming weekend as well. So still have plenty of chances to chat with you guys if you didn't get a chance to tune into this one live, or if you're watching it on playback and hate that you missed it, just check us out on social media or subscribe to us here on YouTube, and you'll know when our next live stream's coming. You can come in and chat with us live. But if you are in here live, drop any final thoughts you have there, any final questions, and I'll touch on those after I share this depth chart projection. And wanted to remind you guys, I just got a chance to finally upload it today. Check out our Houston Review and Reaction podcast. Like I said, I know you guys are sick of hearing about the game, didn't want to, hear about the Hail Mary or anything like that anymore. So I didn't dive into any of the plays, any the specifics, if I could talk right, of the game. I just did some, causes for concern coming from the game, and some, reasons for optimism coming out of the game was kind of how I structured that. And then, of course, recap the other action, in the other games that occurred in the Big 12 Conference from this past week. So if you haven't got a chance to watch that yet, check it out here on our channel. Just released that today. Or if, you like to listen to them on the audio side, you can find it on any podcast platform you like. But having said that, let's take a look at my projected depth chart for the upcoming week for the Mountaineers, and get ready to close this one out here on this snap count stream. Started off here at the top on offense. Obviously, not too many changes in this depth chart, save for me, removing some people, due to injury purposes and stuff. But quarterback, still Garrett Green, first string, Nico Marchiol, second string. Running back, I got C.J. Donaldson, first string, Jaheim White, second string. I think that's kind of how it's shaking out right now. Maybe I should throw Nora in there and put Jalen Anderson up. That did play equal snaps this previous game, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jaheim White was the first one on the field, and he has been, the past couple of games, and he's looked really good as well. And, that's one of my favorite players in the roster. You know that if you follow us here on the Country Roads webcast. So going to keep him there for now. We'll see how it shakes out moving forward, see if we make any changes next week. And like I said, same goes for the wide receiver position here. No, Devin Carter played a lot inside this previous game. Don't know if that was just for game plan reasonings against Houston, but he also had a very good game. So we'll see if they stick to that coming up against Oklahoma State. If he continues to play the majority of his snaps at the inside, you'll probably see next week, like I said, during this depth chart projection during the snap count stream. Devin Carter switch and be listed as the inside receiver, but I've just got, the 6 names that I just talked about during the snap counts that West Virginia's been featuring. I think they'll continue to feature those 6 names, however they mix them up. Rodney Gallagher's even been outpacing Preston Fox in snap counts at times, as he did this past week, as you just saw. So who knows how it'll shake out, but for now, X wide receiver, I got Hudson Clement starting there, EJ Horton backing him up. Inside receiver, Preston Fox, backed up by Rodney Gallagher. And then the Z receiver, Devin Carter, backed up by Traylon Ray. At times when West Virginia has released a depth chart, I think they've released, 2 this season, not counting the preseason one. They've also listed a slot wide receiver position that's not the H inside wide receiver position. And they've had Jarrell Williams and Noah Massey listed there. Jarrell Williams has played, 2 to 5 snaps in, I'd say 4 out of the 6 games West Virginia's played. Didn't play this previous week, maybe 3 out of the 6. So he's actually seen the field some. Noah Massey has not at all, hardly. I think maybe against Duquesne, which is interesting, especially I was thinking about Noah Massey. If you guys were listening to Neil Brown's comments during his press conference this week, was talking about the reasons they were playing Devin Carter at the inside receiver position. And, a lot of it was to get him some, free runs, some easier releases. But also he was talking about having, some better blockers at the slots for the running game. He said a lot of the slots we're playing are, smaller, kind of referencing Preston Fox and Rodney Gallagher. And just in my head, I immediately thought, well, why do you need to move Devin Carter in there when you've got 6'5", 240 Noah Massey that you just brought in, and this is his final year of college football that he's here for, and we haven't really seen him at all, and people have been wondering why we haven't seen him, and I don't know what to say, and I still don't know what to say because he really hasn't even been brought up hardly any. And, if Neil Brown was going to bring him up, you think that he may have brought him up when he's talking about a bigger guy and being, needing bigger blockers at that slot position. So I don't know, but still no word on Noah Massey, really. I don't know if he's just kind of far down the pecking order at this point or what's going on there. But nonetheless, haven't really seen him a ton, but did want to throw that out there. Jarrell Williams and Noah Massey aren't featured here on my depth chart because we haven't really seen either one of them play enough for me to warrant putting them on here. I think I had them on here at one point during the snap counts streams this season, but for now I'm just sticking with these 3 receiver positions because West Virginia's been using tight end more often than not, so it's really just been these 3, and like I said, these are the 6 names we've been seeing. So moving on, tight end, no changes there. Cole Taylor first string, Traylon Davis second string. Offensive line, obviously I've moved Wyatt Milam back in here after having him off for last week after we knew that he would miss the game. Wyatt Milam, and then backed up by Nick Malone at the left tackle spot there. Then the left guard, I've got Brandon Yates because, like I said, with Jaquay Hubbard in the lineup, with Tomas out, he's been playing the right side, and Brandon Yates has shifted over to the left. I've got Jaquay Hubbard there backing him up just because I think that those are kind of your guys there at the guard position right now. Bryce Biggs has been mentioned. Maybe he'll factor in there in the future. Maybe Sully Weedman. But, I think right now those are just kind of the ones that you'd see primarily. Same at the center position where I've got Brandon Yates backing up Zach Frazier because I think if, knock on wood, anything was to ever happen, Brandon Yates would be the one that would slide over there and take the snaps before you bring in, a guy like a Landon Livingston that's a little bit young in the program still yet. And then at right tackle, I've got Doug Nestor backed up by Johnny Williams. And, of course, I mentioned Jaquay Hubbard will be starting at right guard for the Mountaineers with Tomas still out there on the offensive line. So that's kind of what I have on the offense for my projection this week. And then on the defensive side, I don't know if I made hardly any changes on this side right off. Defensive end, Sean Martin backed up by Tomey. Defensive tackle, Steady Eddie V there, of course, the first stringer. And then I've still got the or in between the 3 names here because they've been getting nearly identical snap counts. You saw in this game, Day Hawkins and Asani Redwood be identical, but Jalen Thornton outpaced him by a few. And I think that's the first time that I've seen that, or at least be by, that large of a discrepancy between the 3. But all of them have been playing pretty consistently. So I've got the ors in between the names of Asani Redwood, Day Hawkins, Jalen Thornton for the second string defensive tackle spot. Then the nose tackle, of course, Mike Lockhart's been the starter, but Fatorma Mulba's played great here, coming in as the Penn State transfer. Bandits, we talked about Jared Bartlett and Tyron Bradley. Almost 1A and 1B there. They've even been on the field a lot together at times this season. And then I guess this is kind of the one change since Trey Lathan moved out, is officially putting, Lee Koba at the wheel linebacker position and Ben Cutter at the Mike linebacker spot, as they revealed, in press conferences prior to last week's game, that would be the arrangement, and we saw that on the field this week. I've got Caden Bozzer backed up by Ben Cutter. Once Tyreek Austin Cave returns and we start to see him get some snaps and get some game action, maybe he'll, take over for Bozzer there as the second string person, or I'll put an or in between the names or something moving forward. But got to see Austin Cave healthy first. And then, of course, Lee Koba, the starter at the will linebacker position, backed up by Jaffa Veras, who we saw get some snaps this week. The Spears, Hershey McLaurin, and Lance Dixon. And then the corners, I talked about it earlier, Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin, the first string guys. They're going to play the majority of the snaps. I've got Jacoby Spells backing up Beanie and Andrew Wilson-Lamb backing up Malachi Ruffin. Free safety right now, with Aubrey Burks' status up in there, as we were talked about earlier here, I'm just going Aubrey Burks or Marcus Floyd there. Not putting anyone in the second string spot necessarily there. You see the blank. I think, if Aubrey Burks can play, obviously Marcus Floyd's your backup at the free and cat, really, because last year he was, a cat safety for the Mountaineers. This year he's had to play some free safety after the injury to Aubrey Burks, but ideally, they'd like to have him there, to be able to play a reserve role if they need to spell either one of those guys. And if, you have a healthy Aubrey Burks, that allows you to not only do that, but also we saw Marcus Floyd be used in, almost like the spear type role for West Virginia, nickelback type corner at times, and really did a great job blitzing off the edge earlier this season. So West Virginia could do that if Aubrey Burks is able to return Saturday as well. So fingers crossed he's able to do so. The other safeties that, of course, have been mentioned are, I believe it's Josiah Jackson is the one playing safety. And Jordan Jackson's the one playing corner, if I'm not mistaken. That could be the other way around, though. Can't remember right off, but one of those has been working at safety now, and they've talked about him making good progress. So that's one of the names to watch here as I talk about, freshmen maybe playing in the Final Four games coming up here in a couple of weeks for the Mountaineers. And then Aiden Nelson's a true freshman that's on the roster at safety. West Virginia likes him. Good size. I believe he's about 6'2". So, watch out for him moving along. And then, of course, we've seen Avery Wilcox, the preferred walk-on, get snaps this season, even have an interception earlier. So if West Virginia was to play any reserves, in addition to the names you see here, those would maybe be the guys to watch out for. But then the cat safety, of course, Anthony Wilson continue to be the starter for the Mountaineers. And like I said, Marcus Floyd probably your backup at both spots. Kicker still Michael Hayes. Punter still Oliver Straw. Backup at punter would be Leighton Bechtel. Backup at kicker would be Danny King. Don't have it listed here. Long snapper, of course, has been Austin Brinkman. Kickoff specialist, been Michael Hayes. Kick returner, early in the season, we saw Beanie Bishop handling it, but it's been Jaheim White as of the past couple games. We'll see if that continues to be the case, and maybe he can make something happen there for the Mountaineers. I know, I only say that. We'll see if it continues to be the case, because Neil Brown was kind of hard on kick return in his press conference today, said that they had some ones that they thought that the returner misread. So we'll see if that's something they get corrected for Jaheim White and he performs better, or if we see if that means that he's going to want to try somebody else back there. As we've seen, he's already moved on from Beanie Bishop to Jaheim, but in my opinion, I think Jaheim White's a great option back there. I think he'll get it straightened up, and I would not be surprised to see him, make something happen back there for the Mountaineers. So he's been the kick returner, and of course we know the punt returner has been Preston Fox. Had been great on this season, prior to this game against Houston, but Neil Brown also was very critical of West Virginia's, punt blocking unit. Said they never really gave Preston Fox a chance, but those are the specialists that aren't listed there. But that's my projected depth chart for this upcoming week. Let me scroll back through it a little bit slower in case you guys want to get one final look at it here before we get ready to wrap up here on this Snap Count stream here on the Country Roads webcast, October 16th edition, ahead of the Oklahoma State game here to begin Oklahoma State week. And excited to, see the Mountaineers return home, a homecoming game, and hopefully they get back on the winning track of things this week, coming off that heartbreaker. But they're ready to move past it. We're ready to move past it as Mountaineer fans, and I'm ready to, rally behind this team. I think that, like I said, they're going to be very resilient and bounce back in a big way, and I think it's going to end up being a minor setback for a major comeback. And like I said, golden blue glasses on when I say that, as we like to say here in the Country Roads webcast. Hopefully you guys got you a pair and are pretty optimistic, because I think this team's going to be successful still yet. But that's what I got here, and I appreciate everyone that tuned in here live. Tim Green said he would like to know how the player is that got poked in the eye in the TCU game. Wyatt Milam. Yeah, that's Wyatt Milam, Tim Green. He's going to return this week. That's the left tackle for the Mountaineers. he'll be back, but we'll still be missing Tomas, the left guard. But having Wyatt Milam back at that left tackle position will be huge. West Virginia should be able to utilize that stretch zone run to the left side more. That had been a weapon for them throughout this season because Wyatt Milam had been honestly the best offensive lineman for the Mountaineers this season, even outperforming Zach Frazier. And a lot of West Virginia's successful runs had come that way. And, you saw in this game, West Virginia had to go away from that a little bit, focused more on that right side, trying to run behind Doug Nestor, utilize some jet sweeps from, different receivers, mainly Rodney Gallagher, but you saw him try E.J. Horton once on it as well, trying to go to that right side instead. So with Wyatt Milam back, I think you'll see more successful running outside to the left side, and hopefully West Virginia's running game returns to form. Played pretty decent in the first half against Houston, but absolutely, shut down in that second half, and that hurt the Mountaineers. So got to see the running game return to form. I think having Wyatt Milam back, the player that got poked in the eye there that you mentioned, Tim, will be big for West Virginia in that regard. He's been absolutely phenomenal, and hopefully he just gets back to the way that he was playing before his injury. But glad to see him returning. Hopefully Aubrey Burks is able to return as well. Like I said, Tomas remains out, so hopefully we'll get Aubrey back on the defensive side. At least we're getting one player back on the offensive side there at the left tackle position. So appreciate you guys, tuning in here for our snap count stream this week. We've discussed the injury updates and projected out a depth chart as well. Like I said, be sure to check out the Houston Review and Reaction podcast episode just released today here on the channel if you haven't watched that yet already. Provided, some causes for concern coming out of the game, but also, brought it back around to some reasons for optimism. And I think those outweigh the causes for concern in my part. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So I'm going to continue to look at it that way moving forward at least. But looking forward to talking about Oklahoma State with you guys later in the week on another live stream where we'll get your predictions for the game. And before we get there, like I said, here in the next couple of days, you'll be able to catch our Oklahoma State preview and predictions podcast. So be on the lookout for that. And if you want to know when it's coming out, stay tuned to us here on YouTube by being subscribed to us, or check us out on social media at WVU Country Roads on X, and then Country Roads Webcast on both Facebook and Instagram. Appreciate you guys that tuned into this one live, or if you watched on a playback, like I said, before you finish watching, hit that thumbs up button, give us a like. That really helps us a lot. If you didn't get a chance to tune in live, drop your thoughts there in the comment, and I'll try and respond there in text form. We really appreciate those interactions there as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads Webcast community. Excuse me, like I said, tripping over my words tonight. It's been a long day. I worked earlier, guys, but trying to grow that Country Roads Webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation, I should say. But appreciate you guys. Looking forward to a more positive week for West Virginia coming up, and hopefully a more positive result on Saturday as West Virginia faces the Cowboys in a very pivotal contest. Like I said, this one's going to prove who's a Big 12 contender, but I believe it'll be our Mountaineers at the end of the day. Hopefully I'm right. We'll talk about it more moving forward on the week, and once we break down the game against Oklahoma State, be able to provide my true prediction here in a couple of days on the Oklahoma State Preview and Predictions podcast episode. So be on the lookout for that coming from us here on the Country Roads Webcast, as well as another live stream where we'll chat with you guys later in the week. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.